Hello, it's Michelle. I wanted to talk with you about communication in relationships. There's just a few key pieces that are so important to keep in mind and will literally change everything for you about your relationships and the quality of your experience of them. So, what we need to remember is what science has shown us. It's not speculation, we're not questioning, we're not wondering. We know now, first and foremost, here's some stats for you. We know that it takes 3 to 5 repetitions of something before people even really register that they've heard it or experienced it. Okay? So when you ask somebody once, especially a kid or a teenager or somebody who is distracted by something else and not giving you their full attention, you need to understand that one ask is almost certainly not going to be sufficient for them to really hear and understand what you're asking, and perhaps even to remember it. I'm not saying that's great, and I'm not trying to excuse poor behavior, but that's what we know about the human brain, and that's what I want you to remember. It's not just the other person that we're dealing with, it's human physiology, actually. So, first things first, 3 to 5. 3 to 5 repetitions of your need or your request or reminders. We can talk about this more in the group chat, but I just want you to keep that in mind. So if you've asked somebody to do something and they forgot or they didn't follow through, or maybe what happens more often is they did remember and they did follow through, but not as you wanted. They didn't quite get the message about what you were asking or how you wanted something done, or that certain elements were really important to you. So it's really important when things don't go as you're expecting in a communication or some follow through, that you remember the 3 to 5 rule and you ask yourself, yes, how many times did I clarify my need or my request and really what specifically I was looking for? Okay. The other statistic I want you to keep in mind is it's kind of scary, but some statistics say 90%. Most that I've seen say 80%. It's still a high number of human communication. 80 to 90% of human communication is what we call meta message. Nonverbal cues, things like eye contact and hand gestures, other forms of body language, the tone and the speed with which you are speaking, the loudness or softness with which you are speaking. Those are all parts of a meta message. The only part that isn't meta message in communication is the actual words you are saying. Everything else, 80 to 90%, is this meta message. What's critical to remember about that is that based on your background, your upbringing, role models in your past, even kind of pop culture references that you have in mind, certain gestures will mean different things to you. Certain tones of voice, certain speeches, certain body language. You could take the obvious example of an Italian family where there's just naturally a lot of raised voices, a lot of intensity, a lot of fast speech, a lot of noise, a lot of hand gestures, and pairing them with somebody who was not raised in that culture, you could imagine that some of those people not from that culture might see that as intense or maybe even aggressive, when in fact it's really just perfectly normal for this person's background and not at all intended to be harmful in any way. So we have the 3 to 5 rule, meaning you have to remember that you're going to need to do things a few times with somebody or remind them or communicate your need to them a few times before they'll really even understand what you're asking, let alone be able to perform it consistently in the way that you're hoping. And then we have this 80 to 90% of communication that has nothing to do with the words that you're using. So that means it's really critical for you to actually not just say what it is you want to say, but to check in with the person about what they've heard and make sure that they understand what you're asking of them. It's just a really important, once you practice it a few times, you'll wonder, why didn't I do this before? It just makes so much sense because there's almost always some little bit of detail that their brain fills in, just like yours does, that can send the whole message quite sideways. In fact, most arguments in relationships are based on this issue of a misunderstanding of what is being asked, not a lack of willingness to try to meet the partner's need, but a misunderstanding about what they're looking for. So that's really helpful to know. One of the best tools that I've ever found for communication, and I share it all the time, and I'll share a handout with you about it in your email, is called nonviolent communication. It was designed by a fellow by the name of Marshall Rosenberg, who passed away a couple of years ago now, but not before making a huge difference in the world. He was involved in some significant events around the world, including some Israeli-Palestinian peace talks and other noteworthy events. The premise of nonviolent communication is really to just first hold yourself accountable to make sure that what you're asking of someone really has anything to do with them and is reasonable, and that you're communicating it in such a way that demonstrates respect and curiosity. So the nonviolent communication tool has 4 basic steps. You state your observation of what's happening or what isn't working for you, what you need to see happening differently or what you'd like. So that's step 1. Step 2, you tell yourself you tell the other person how you feel about that particular situation, how it affects you. You then tell them in step 3 what needs you have that aren't being met, and we've just talked about needs handily. So you tell them what needs you have that aren't being met in this situation. So there's a real clarification of this person about what it is you're talking about specifically. What it is that you feel and need about this thing. Why is it critical? How does it affect you? And then the last step, the 4th step, is the request. This is where you say, would you be willing? And then you ask them, that question I've been teaching you about what would have to happen in order for me to feel peaceful? Well, this is where you would ask that question. So if you realize, I would need my partner to, spend a little time with me when he gets home. Okay, so we would say, would you be willing to spend a little time with me when you get home? Now, actually, that's a bad example because you'd want to be more specific. Based on the meta message concept, what he thinks of as a little time might actually not meet your need or might be way too much. You might just need 10 minutes and he might think you mean an hour or 2, in which case he might actually say no because he knows he doesn't have 2 hours to give you, and really you'd be happy with 10 minutes. So the clarity, the tangibleness, and this is a key piece of those requests, is you want to make sure it's something that you could measure. You could both kind of look back and you could say, absolutely, you did that. Thank you. So it has to be something clear that this person could action on if they were willing, and that you could both tell was done to your satisfaction. Okay, so far we've talked about the concept of our meta message and our communication. We've talked about the 3 to 5 rule and just knowing that we're going to have to repeat ourselves, and that doesn't mean the person doesn't care and isn't listening. It's just the way the brain works. And now we've talked about the 4 steps of a really excellent communication tool for you to be able to communicate what it is that you need. And this also works in reverse. If somebody's making a request of you, you can say something like, okay, I hear that you're asking me for whatever, that's the observation. You can talk about how you feel. I feel anxious about that need because I have needs for clarification or a little more information about what exactly that looks like for you. So would you be willing to tell me a bit more? That's one of my favorite ways to approach any request that comes my way, really, because of what I know about communication and the meta message and how easy it is to misunderstand or just assume with really good intention that you've fully got the message. So I always like to just clarify, what is it this person is asking of me? How would they like that done? And that allows me to start to go back to my values and principles, my roles and goals, the needs that I have right now in life and in that situation. And it allows me to much more confidently and accurately assess whether I can meet that need. It also allows me to figure out if there's another way, perhaps, that I might be able to meet that person's need that also works better for me. So maybe they asked me to do something Tuesday at 3, which isn't ideal, could do, but not ideal. What is more ideal is Friday morning. So if I find out why Tuesday afternoon is important to them, then I can understand better whether Friday morning is an option. Then I can float that idea. Reasonable people who are interested in your needs getting met as well as theirs are always interested in a win-win. They're always open to hearing from you a way that you could meet their needs that works really well for you. So that's also a way to tell when you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't have that skill, who thinks more in terms of win-lose or more impatient, immediate gratification, what I want right now. Those people are really difficult to build healthy relationships with. So it's good to know when you're in front of one so that you can take a step back, or so that you can better understand that perhaps some of the problems you have in that relationship really aren't about you. And then you can start to call that out a little bit more and address that. We'll get to that down the road. So for today, I just want you to be thinking about the 3 to 5 rule, the meta message versus the actual words, and this nonviolent communication tool, and just start to experiment with communicating more consciously in that way. And remember, repetition is a part of good communication. There's nothing wrong if you have to repeat yourself. There's only something wrong if the person isn't willing to listen. And of course, if you've repeated yourself 5 times and nothing's changing, then we need to step that up a bit. But we'll talk about that down the road too. So I hope you're having a really great day. I'm having a lovely walk with the pups, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Hang on.